The bandwagon, as they say, was getting heavy. Everyone started to jump on the bandwagon again.
Portland is not in a position to try to come back, and he should just kind of leave that alone.
Stop being satisfied with mediocre performances.
I don't like it. Plain and simple, I really don't like it. An all-star game just shows how much they just kind of continue to placate the players and their lackadaisical efforts on the court.
You really sparked my interest, and I'm sure that of many others. Alister, Albert, thank you very much.
Hello and welcome to the new episode of Baseline to Baseline with Alister and Orain. I am, of course, Alister Albert, and we have, as usual, Orain Buchanan. When I say as usual, you missed a couple of weeks because you've had things that you needed to do. But, lovely to have you back. I see you again. We're doing this whole coordination thing on the jerseys. We have a trade deadline that just happened where one important player moved between those teams, so we'll get to that in a little while. But of course, it's Super Bowl weekend. We had a big game this evening. I'm not sure if you're really following it too much, but we're not worrying about NFL right now. We're talking basketball. Our jersey match shows. NFL is not the main thing. Basketball is what we're here to talk about and what we love to do most of all. So yeah, nice to have you back, Orain. How's everything been?
Most things good, my friend.
Good.
First year.
Say that again?
I said this will be the first recording between us for the new year.
Yeah, is it? What? It's been that? Yeah, because the past couple of episodes I had to end up doing them alone, but now nice to have you back. We're talking in the background, we keep each other up to date with what's going on in the league. So, it's first on the recording, but we're in contact. That's the main thing. But of course, we're back because, and as planned, because the trade deadline has come and gone. And, it's a point in the season now where things are really starting to shake up and things are starting to settle for us to see who's actually going to get into the home stretch to be actual contenders for the season. And of course, the trade deadline passed and, so many players moved. There are a few major, things that happen that really, changes the landscape moving forward. And also some things where you just had these like head scratches. What are these teams doing? Sort of thing. So we're definitely going to start off there. Of course, everyone knows, the main person everyone was looking to see would move in this trade deadline is Giannis Antetokounmpo. But we'll come back to him in a little bit. And we just want to talk about the players who actually did move. And as I started off, we talked about the jersey swaps. I think probably the main player who moved, the biggest name, was Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis, of course, traded for Luka Doncic last season. He was the headliner of a trade that happened that took everyone off guard, going over to the Mavericks. And now, very quickly on, he's moved on to the Washington Wizards the Mavericks will not like what they got back, but it is what it is. What did you think about the trade deadline so far? AD moving, anything that really stood out for you? Major disappointments, things that you like to see. Let's kick off with that one there.
Well, it just shows that Nico Harrison could possibly be one of the dumbest persons alive. That trade for Luka Doncic is certainly playing out to be very ridiculous now. The Mavericks, 20 games. Anthony Davis played for the Dallas Mavericks. 24 points per game, 11 rebounds, 2.8 assists. Certainly not the numbers the Dallas Mavericks would have hoped for. And not only that, availability.
Yes.
Anthony is one of those players that whenever he's on the court, you love him. Absolutely love what he brings to the table. But how often is Anthony Davis on the court? That's the main problem.
Yeah.
And it just shows, Anthony Davis now goes to the Washington Wizards, out for the season, as that was confirmed earlier today. With the best thing for him. His main his main years in the league, I have to just track back a little bit. His main years in the league came when he was at New Orleans Pelicans. That was where he made his name in the league. Started off there, show what he can bring to the table, bring to the league. And then he went to the Lakers, and we know what happened there. He got a chip with LeBron James. But just doing some research before we were planning for the show, and I just want to call out some numbers here. I know I'm an numbers guy, Alister. Started off in the 2013-2014 season, 67 games. The following season, 68. 2016, 61. 2017, 75. 2018, 75. 2019, just before he got traded to the LA Lakers, 56 games. He was available when he was at the New Orleans Pelicans.
Yeah, that's when he was youngest as well. The legs were still fresh.
Exactly. Now when he went to the Lakers, 62, 36, 40, 56, 76, and 42. Those are the numbers that he played year by year in the LA Lakers. Most he has ever played, 2016-2017 season, and that was 75 games. Anthony Davis has always struggled to be on the court ever since he left the New Orleans Pelicans. Is that a sign that he's not a big market player? Could possibly be. New Orleans is not a big market. He made his name there. I think him sitting out the rest of the season for the Washington Wizards because of injury, that's a fact. Coming back next year, I think we'll see the real unibrow come next year. Unibrow is a small market, not a lot of expectations there for him. I mean, if they make it to the NBA playoffs, it will be a big thing for the Washington Wizards. No one is counting on Anthony to bring a chip to the Washington Wizards immediately. So I think him going back to a small market will bring out the best in him. And I think that, he'll be back to his old self when he's available.
Cool. Yeah, that's that in itself is a high expectation. Not going for a chip is one thing, but Anthony Davis getting back to himself, what we expect, that 20, 26 and 12 player that he was, 2-3 blocks a game, that would be major expectations for the Washington Wizards. And I wore this jersey, and I know we had this conversation when we were talking about the Trae Young trade, and we were talking about who was the next best point guard before Trae Young arrived. And I went to John Wall, but we actually forgot about Russell Westbrook. So this is an old Russell Westbrook jersey. But I wore this jersey because I think what we're seeing in the media right now is there's the narrative starting to build about the Wizards probably being the darling of the NBA next year. A potentially healthy Anthony Davis, a potentially healthy Trae Young, next to Alex Sarr, who's playing really well as a young center in this league, showing what he can do, and players like that, Cam Whitmore, Bub Carrington, and all the guys that are there. And I think, I think if it's always a big if with Anthony Davis, if this guy could play at least the league minimum for awards, the 65 games, that he could play, if he could do that, and the Wizards will be in a really good position. I think we saw what Trae Young could do with a team of underachievers and not really too much around him. Trae Young didn't have this version of Jalen Johnson the last couple of years, with the Hawks, and he was able to get them to the play-in, get to the first round, that sort of stuff. The times that they made it. But I think getting to at least first round of the playoffs is definitely an expectation, and more, which is actually good for the Washington Wizards. So that expectation is capped for the Washington Wizards, like you say. And if he could actually provide more time on the court, that availability, then the ceiling gets a little bit higher, depending on what he's able to do. So let's see what happens with him. But I think, the narrative is definitely being set in terms of, let's see what Anthony Davis could bring to the Washington Wizards next year with Trae Young. I think the lob threat is going to be really interesting. You have two rim running guys like that who could play defense and could shoot the ball. There's a lot at their disposal there. I think, some young talent on some really good timelines in terms of age. Anthony Davis, I'm not too sure how old he is now. He's about 31, 32 maybe. He's probably on the latter end of that timeline in terms of being older. But, the team is poised to make a jump, a positive jump, next season. And, it'll be really good to see what happened. So that was one of the trades, one of the, I suppose, the biggest name who moved. But then there were some other ones that happened afterwards that were like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Jaren Jackson Jr. moving from the Memphis Grizzlies to the Utah Jazz. Everybody was looking to see what would happen with Ja Morant. Ja Morant not moving at all. People talking about his trade value is basically zero. Teams don't want to trade for him. There's that school of thought that's out there. We have Nikola Vucevic moving to the Celtics. I think that was probably the next biggest move for me. The Celtics have been looking for a bona fide center for some time. This is a guy who has been an all-star and everything. We've spoken about the Celtics. You were very prophetic earlier on in the season where you said this could be a top 2, top 3, top 4 seed team. And they're right there in the mix, top 2, top 3. Jason Tatum potentially coming back and all of that. What do you see from that trade happening, the Vucevic acquisition by Brad Stevens and the Celtics? Do you think, this is something that could propel them probably even further into the postseason, I suppose?
He's a very versatile player. That guy can pop outside the midpoint and also three-point range. I think Vucevic will add something to the Celtics that Kristaps Porzingis didn't do. I think he's one of those players that he doesn't show up on the box score every single night. Meaning, if you just follow the box score and you see his numbers, it won't glaringly jump out at you. But if you watch his productivity on the court, you'll see exactly what Vucevic brings to the floor.
To add to what you're saying, I'm just gonna add on to what you're saying. Nikola Vucevic is probably the quietest 2010 guy there is in the league. He'll put up his numbers and you have no idea he actually did it. You'll see the few shots here and there, but you wonder, did he actually impact the game? You look at the box score and like you said, numbers probably don't jump out, but usually they tend to be very good, solid numbers, double numbers. Bringing that to the Celtics, I think you're right. So yeah, you continue your point.
He brings the same thing to the table as Domantas Sabonis.
Yes, in a way, yeah. But what I would say with Sabonis is Sabonis plays a lot tougher, on the rebounding and everything. He seems to be like a more aggressive big who plays closer to the basket than Vucevic would. He would be the free throw line extended, jump shot floater type of guy. He'll get into his little post up, game every now and then, but he doesn't play as a big, what we would see as a big, maybe from the 90s, early 2000s. Nikola Vucevic has never been that to me, but absolutely, he's going to be a very productive guy for the Celtics. And one of the things that I lamented about the Celtics this season was who was going to man that center spot. Of course, Neemias Queta has been the starter, and he has played, to his credit, really well for the season. I was on the Chris Boucher thing for, really early on in the season thinking, he'd be done, but he was waived by the team to make space for Nikola Vucevic. And of course, well, it is what it is. You didn't step up and, you got to move. So yeah, I think he brings that bona fide center that, they don't have to be looking and wondering, who should be the starting center now. And when you have a guy like Jaylen Brown, who everyone is saying, he should be in the MVP conversation a lot louder than he actually is right now. With that, with Derek White playing as he is, Peyton Pritchard playing, the peskiest, most productive, he's probably ever been, point guard that he is. And we have to keep talking about it, the potential of Jason Tatum to come back. We're not expecting him to be the 28, 29 point scorer that he was before injury, but him coming back with coming with that 15 to 18 points per game, 6-7 rebounds, 2 to 3 pointers a game. That would be a really good boost for them.
Just to add to that, he's on a record pace to make his return to the NBA. That's Jason Tatum, and I'm very worried about that because at this day, as we're recording today, he has been out 242 days.
Right.
I think he'll be ready in about, based on his trajectory now, I think he'll be ready in just slightly over a month's time, based on what is going on now. Yeah. And I think might be fast tracking him a little bit. I'm not sure, but I'll be paying very close attention to Tatum's return to the league.
Yeah, and Charles Barkley is right there with you. He came out and he said, he's really worried about that return because you don't. This is something you don't want to push, but like by all accounts, well, him and I'll bring Tyrese Halliburton into it a little bit. These guys are coming back from a major injury, Achilles tendon tear. And the videos that I've seen have been really impressive from the both of them. I saw one of Tyrese Halliburton today of them just playing, scrimmaging, just messing around, trying to get their self back. And the guys are playing really well, coming off of what that is. Jason Tatum is doing full court sprints, full court drills. He's now getting into 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 on court play with the coaches and his team during practice. And like you said, the trajectory is there. Like he said, he wants to come back, but he does have these little concerns. He made it very clear. Am I going to come back and mess up the chemistry? Can I be who I was? I don't want to come back in a way that is not suits what people remember of me, and of course that is definitely the right concern for him to have. But the trajectory shows that maybe he should, and what he can bring to that team elevates their chances even further. But then if the team is playing so good, should he risk it? Should he come back? But we'll see as the team kind of goes.
His name being added to the Boston Celtics elevates them into championship pedigree.
Yeah, for sure.
So we can see, but I'm not really a big fan of what I'm seeing in terms of how they're fast tracking, but it's a wait and see game. I mean, we're living at guys recover from injuries very much faster than previous years. I mean, based on technology and things around that. So we just have to wait and see if he's really, based on what I'm seeing, I think it's a little bit fast tracking his return to it.
Yeah, I totally agree as well. He probably should take his time, but very early on, he said he wanted to come back. March had been floated as around the time that he would return, and like you said, within about a month's time, that's when that's going to happen. The other little trades, from the positive standpoint, the ones that I like to see, actually, this is a really one of the smaller ones, but I thought that was really good. Jose Alvarado to the Knicks. I think that kind of blue chip, blue collar type of player. Go into the Knicks. That energy. He's from that area. I think that was a really good one. Oh, and how could we forget James Harden to the Cavaliers? That's another one that was a huge one, leaving the Clippers. There's this contract talk, his contract for next year, not fully guaranteed. He went up to the front office and wanted to try to negotiate a long-term deal. Him being moved for Darius Garland, now with Donovan Mitchell, two guys who many people have said have choked in the playoffs. I'm not getting their team as far as they need to, who are really good regular season players. You put them together to try to hope for the best in the playoffs. What do you see about this one now? James Harden to the Cavs with Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen. Do you think this team has a chance to actually do really good?
In their debut game, James Harden alongside Donovan Mitchell, they did something that no duo has ever done in Cleveland Cavaliers history. Those two scored points in the fourth quarter to win their game last night. That would have been February. Yesterday would have been February 8th, something like that.
Yeah.
So
February 7th, against the Kings.
Yeah, when you have James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, Dean Wade, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen as your starting five, you're in the mix to cause problems. And that is what the Cavaliers did when they acquired James Harden. They are now in the business of creating problems over the Eastern Conference. James Harden brings 25.4 points per game to this team. That is what they want. Donovan Mitchell has always been a player from his Utah Jazz days. To bring a team to the playoffs can't pass that second round hurdle.
Yep.
Not that kind of closer, that killer mentality that we want to see with him now playing alongside James Harden. James Harden will help him to shoulder the burden on the offensive end. And that is what Cleveland Cavaliers want. Also interesting point to me, when you talk about most wins in the playoffs without a title, James Harden is right up there. He's fourth actually on that. Karl Malone heads that with 98. John Stockton second with 89. Sam Perkins 88. James Harden fourth with 85. Chris Paul with 76 rounds out top five with most wins in the playoffs without an end.
Right.
This is what he wants. No. He's not playing to make it to the playoffs. He's not playing to make it to the conference finals. He's playing to win an NBA title. And I think on sports, the best team in the Eastern Conference that could match James Harden's style is the Cleveland Cavaliers. They have everything that James Harden needs around him.
Yeah.
And from one healthy, remains strong, remains positive, I think the Cleveland Cavaliers are in the mix to create very, very, very much problem in the playoffs this year. Also, what is interesting to note, they are doing something that could potentially bring LeBron James back to the Cavs next season. Clearing space so they can use trade picks and sign LeBron James as a free agent next year. Now imagine, let's just fast track next year. And a 40-year-old LeBron James.
Yep.
Farewell tour. Cleveland Cavaliers are in the mix to create problem, and I'm very much excited for what the Cavs are over in the Eastern Conference.
Absolutely, absolutely. The future looks bright for the very short term. Very short term. You know, as so. Say that again. Sorry, your audio went there for a bit.
Of every team, the Pistons, Celtics, and Knicks, they are not far off of the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're right in their line of vision, like a horse in blinders. And I think this is the perfect position for the Cleveland Cavaliers to have a real title shot this season.
Awesome. I agree with you there. And I think, yeah, that was probably one of the trades that probably impacted that team. That team was kind of dead. I think they had reached their peak with Darius Garland. And one of the reasons why, I think when we were speaking really early on in the season, and we were thinking about which teams we think we could go for, one of the things I said about the Cavaliers was I don't trust them. I don't trust them with Donovan Mitchell. We've seen this movie before and everything. But one of the things you said that made me a little bit nervous, I agreed with everything you said, but when you said killer mentality and James Harden, I was like, man, can he actually bring it to the Cavs? Because what we've seen is awesome regular seasons where, he's averaging 25, close to 30 points a game. He had a really good season helping the Clippers turn their season around from December 20th, being the first or second best team record-wise, turning their season around. And then, you know what James Harden could do. He's one of the best offensive scorers in NBA history. Pairing him with another guy who's as capable as Donovan Mitchell, you should expect fireworks, offensively. But then when it comes to the playoffs, there's always something that goes wrong with him. But at least he has another guy who has a killer mentality in Donovan Mitchell. But what his problem was not having that other person who could at least give him 20 consistent points. But in the biggest of moments, game 6s, game 7s, James Harden goes 2 for 7 from the field, 1 of 8 from free, and that sort of stuff. So that killer mentality tends to dissipate at times in the most biggest moments for James Harden. And we have to see what happens. We cannot predict. It's another season, another team, another team for James Harden. But can he actually get past some of those moments where he feels like he just gives up? I think Donovan Mitchell is a good enough leader to try to get something out of him. And, he's probably one of the best guards to pair James Harden with to probably maximize what he could give at this point. So I really do like to see what they have coming on the rest of the season. So absolutely, you like to point that out. Other little trades as well. Jonathan Kuminga, his situation with the Golden State Warriors, that is now done. Him and Buddy Hield being shipped off to the Hawks for Kristaps Porzingis. Luke Kennard going over to the Los Angeles Lakers. I think Lakers fans are a little bit disappointed with that move, but when you think about what Luke Kennard could do as a shooter, adding him to this lineup, I think that was actually a good basketball decision in terms of an acquisition. Let's see what happens, and if he could kind of keep that up. I think he's averaging something like 43% from 3 this season and has been a really good shooter for his career. So that is another good little trade. Ivica Zubac, another Clipper who went to the Pacers. That was another interesting trade that kind of that went ahead. The Clippers, it just kind of felt like they've decided to just break up that core. And I think one of the things when I kind of was speaking about Lawrence Frank earlier on in the season, and I said, he's not done anything for this team. He has stuck with the core and everything. And I think he's starting to show that, he's ready to make moves to try to revitalize this team and rebuild this team. Let's see what happens with Kawhi Leonard. Will they trade him in the offseason? I think teams were actually calling to ask about him during this trade deadline. So we're not sure what's going to happen. But the trades so far this season have been really eye-catching and everything. But let's move on to the negative side of things there. There's some teams that I was just like, what what are these teams thinking? Chief suspect, chief culprit, the Chicago Bulls. What were they doing? I think I've seen so many videos of people who are totally, befuddled by what they've done. They're just stacking up guards. I made a joke on Twitter with Peter Vesey a couple of days ago after the trade deadline. I said they're stacking up guards like they're looking for a security team. You have a whole bunch of security guards. You have the, and I made a joke like, they have more guards than Buckingham Palace at the moment. What are they doing? Is this something where they're acquiring assets to try to package up for a deal in the offseason? What's really going on? The Houston Rockets. Well, anyway, let's talk. What do you think?
When teams overbulk on one end of the spectrum, that is what they're doing to secure certain assets so that they can move in for a big player, big market player. So I think that's the only rationale behind this, because to have so many guys, it doesn't make any sense for me. That's just the correct answer there. Stacking up as much assets as possible so they can move in for a big player.
Yep.
They stacked up on everything. I mean, the Miami Heat did nothing. So
that's the next one I was coming to.
For you. Yeah, but it good business in my point. I think they have everything they should need in regards to going for making some trouble over there. So when you look at Davion Mitchell, Tyler Hero when he's healthy, Norman Paul, Andrew, Bam Adebayo, I think that's a solid enough starting five to go second round in the playoffs. I don't think
this season, you mean? This season?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's good enough for second round. I don't think Pat Riley or any of the management there at Miami really think this team can challenge for a title this season. So with what they have, rinse it out as much as possible. And we've seen this over the years with the Miami. They can juice gallons out of two oranges. We've seen how well that coaching staff can work with minimum talent. So I think getting up playing inside the playoffs this year, they can make a real run inside the Eastern Conference. So I think the Miami Heat will cause some problem, but not enough problem for me. There'll be a mid-table team like 5-6, finish there about 7th around the playing part. So I think that was good on their part.
Cool. Yeah, the Miami Heat, the Bulls, I don't even really want to talk about them anymore because as is like it's there's a word we use in St. Lucia called we say when you say you're making a commerce is just a mess. They're just making a bouillon of mess, a soup of mess. I don't really know what's going on, but like you say, the rationale could be to acquire as many assets as possible with reasonable contracts for shifting to get someone else. But who is one to go to the Bulls at the moment? Who is there on the Bulls that will want to bring any sort of talent? There was once a discussion about potentially Anthony Davis going back to his hometown. There was a little bit of interest from his side where that's concerned, but the team doesn't have anything. There's no sweetener on that team to want to probably get people there. You probably going to get players who want to go there to kind of just be in the nostalgia of Michael Jordan. Josh Giddey is not a name on the marquee to want to kind of bring people to the Bulls. They seem to just be in this perpetual rebuild situation that I just don't understand. But anyway, that's the Chicago Bulls. The Miami Heat, like you said, they were the only team in the Eastern Conference who did not make a move this trade deadline, which was really puzzling to many people. Of course, they were heavily involved in the Giannis Antetokounmpo talks. Many people thought, they probably would make a move with him. Khalil Ware, Jaime Jaquez Jr. picks and everything kind of going over to the Bucks for that. That of course didn't happen. When it looked like that was not going to happen, everyone was of course then turned their eyes to Ja Morant. Would they go for Ja Morant and everything? That of course didn't happen as well. So it's one of these things where Pat Riley, most people are now starting to get really frustrated with him, at least Miami Heat fans. I have a really strong Miami Heat fan in one of my NBA groups on WhatsApp. And, the words that he called Pat Riley were not for the airways. It's not for the airways. Many people were not really happy with, him not making moves. Another trade deadline and offseason has passed, and Pat Riley, the godfather, not doing anything. So, I think people are waiting to see what's going to happen. And I think if he strikes out again this offseason, Pat Riley might probably need to think about retiring. I think it's probably coming to that point if you see he cannot really swing a big deal. He's talking about, wanting to get that whale. He's whale hunting, and all he's getting is guppies at the moment. All he's getting is guppies. He's not getting any whales, So it's really unfortunate to see that, they're not able to get to the point that they want to get to. But anyway, the other one that was really surprising for me as well was the Houston Rockets. They didn't go after trying to get a point guard anyway. One of the ones that I thought they probably would have gotten, well, of course, Ja Morant. I think we had said, when we were talking about a potential trade destination for him, he would have been really good with the Houston Rockets. That didn't happen. Although there was talks about them going after Giannis as well, or Kendrick Perkins at least saying, they should go after Giannis Antetokounmpo. But one of the persons that I thought they should have gone for was when Mike Conley was traded to the Bulls and then traded to the Charlotte Hornets. He has now been waived. I thought the Houston Rockets should go for him because they need a point guard. They need a veteran point guard, and I think we've seen these little moments where, of course, the Rockets have played well enough this season, but they're missing that organizing piece. Starting place for them, organizing things on the court. And I think Mike Conley would have been a really good pickup for them. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Any things in the last 5 minutes that we have before we end this part of the segment? Any of these moves that stood out for you? The Houston, Ja Morant staying in Memphis. Anything you want to call out there?
Yeah, that was the only one that kind of took me aback. I thought Ja Morant should have been on the chopping block. Time in Houston, Memphis, right, its course. I think Ja Morant would have fit perfectly in another situation there. Grizzlies team is not conducive to his style of play.
Yeah,
and it's the coaching staff, they're looking in a different direction in terms of their playing style that hasn't suited Ja Morant. And I think that a different team, a different outlook would have been best for him. But Ja Morant himself stated that that's why he has it tattooed on his back. He's not ready to leave Memphis. I mean, if he's there, then why not stay? I mean, I said it in a previous interview before that the loneliest place a man can be is to be somewhere where he's not wanted.
Yep.
In Houston, keep on saying Houston because Kevin Durant and those guys are playing good. In Memphis, I think that he should just stay there, and that's what he did. He stayed put. So I think, a resurgence of Ja Morant.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see what happens with him for the rest of the season. Of course, he's injured at the moment. Will they actually shut him down? Would they play him? It was just one of the most, weird trade deadlines that I've seen, a few, good names, moving here and there. We have, I called it at one point the logjam deadline, because it feels like teams kind of moving players to places that already had so many of the positions, like Jonathan Kuminga going to the Hawks. He's going to be in a glut of forwards the same way over there. The guard situation with the Chicago Bulls. I was just kind of thinking, how some of these teams are gonna, clear out their situation. I'm not too sure. The Warriors getting a center, awesome for them. Kristaps Porzingis, is not the most durable of players, but he's ready to go. I think the medical staff have said, he's good to go, but they're going to hold him out until the All-Star break, and he will kind of make his debut against the Celtics when they come back from the break. So that'll be interesting to see. So, but yeah, you wanted to say something there?
I think this is the last chance for the Milwaukee Bucks to do something for Giannis.
Yes.
I think he's given one more chance to say, listen, all right, I'm going to be loyal, I'm going to be faithful to the Milwaukee Bucks franchise and give you guys one more chance. I've seen it. I think this is the second or third trade deadline that he has called them out secretly and said, listen, give me something in Milwaukee. And I think this might last time Giannis gave them a free pass. I think the next time Giannis gets frustrated in Milwaukee in terms of not having enough around him, we'll see Giannis.
And what we are going to talk about that a little more in segment 2 coming up right now. We're going to take a break here. Moving on into segment 2. Yeah, but that Giannis point you made, that's the perfect segue for us to kind of get into that conversation a little further, because yeah, he was the main piece. He was the domino everyone was waiting to see would fall, and of course he didn't move. But let's stay with us here, segment 2 of Baseline to Baseline with Alister and Lorraine coming up with you, where we're going to talk a little more about Giannis and his future with the Milwaukee Bucks, and or wherever else he might be, reasons for maybe why he hasn't moved. And then what we're gonna do is, of course, the season has come and gone to this point where we are. Trade deadline is now gone. We are going to try to have a look and see, what is the contention situation now? Do we think that any teams are in a better position to contend based on the moves that have been made so far? So stay tuned. Segment 2 coming up with us. Baseline to Baseline with Alister and Lorraine. Lorraine here with us. And I'm here, of course, Alister here. And we're going to move into segment 2 right now. All right, welcome back to segment 2 of Baseline to Baseline with Alister and Lorraine. This is episode 12 of our little series here, or which you could find us, on all your podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and of course you could get us on socials as well: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. We have everything going on there. So we have all our little cuts, from our episodes that are put up on social media. And of course, the last couple of episodes that we did, we had 2, amazing guests. Episode 10 saw Peter Vesey, Hall of Fame analyst and commenter, broadcaster, Hall of Fame guy. We had a really lovely chat about quite a few different topics. MJ and Isaiah, his love for Caitlin Clark and Steph Curry. We had a really awesome chat. And then last episode 11, Coach Rick Turner, the Jamaican national basketball team coach, who joined us on the podcast, and kind of giving some insight into the excitement around the Jamaican basketball team as well. So it was really, really good to have these people. So if you haven't seen any of those episodes, of course, go check out our platforms where you could get these interviews in full. But of course, coming back to segment 2 here, of course, we were talking about the trade deadline. NBA trade deadline 2026 has come and gone. We've seen some players who have been moved, but the main piece, Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Milwaukee Bucks champion, Defensive Player of the Year, All-Star MVP, league MVP, all the stuff that he has done for the Milwaukee Bucks. Everyone was anticipating that, his time is coming to an end. And like Lorraine was saying to end last segment, he's given them a pass. He's given them quite a lot of time of his career to try to make things happen. And of course, they won their championship against, what was it? The Phoenix Suns a few years ago. And now, since then, it's just been first round exits after first round exits, very disappointing situations. Of course, they tried their best with Damian Lillard. That didn't work. And this trade deadline has come and they did nothing. They were not able to do anything. Giannis, it seems like he's still waiting to see if they'll bring someone in. Ja Morant was floated around. They figured, that might be a last gasp to maybe try to keep him. But the major thing everyone was waiting to see was, where would he move to? Where would Giannis go to? And he's stayed put for now. And he put out, I don't know if you've seen the tweet that he put out, Lorraine, or the image, the video that he put out. I think a clip from Wolf of Wall Street, the movie, where he says, legends don't chase, they attract. He put out that phrase after the trade deadline where he didn't move, to kind of intimate that, he's not moving. I'm not going nowhere. I bring people to me. That's what Giannis is trying to say there. But is this going to be the same situation in the offseason? Are you going to attract, or do you want to move? What do you think? Like you said, to end the last segment, you think, he's given them, as much time as they can to do something. Do you think he will stay, or do you think he will move?
I think one of the crucial things in this discussion is that Giannis has what a lot of persons want. and that's an NBA championship. He has already got an NBA Finals MVP to his name. You can't take that away from him. So whatever happens from now to the end of his career, he'll forever be called an NBA champion in Milwaukee. That is one thing, but he wants to have more. He wants to acquire more with this team. I mean, he's shown his loyalty to this team, and he wants them to repay that. He wants them to bring in players that can contend for NBA title every single season. I mean, currently 12 over there in the East. What's the ceiling for the Milwaukee Bucks this year?
Nothing. The draft, the lottery.
Like, what do you really expect to come out of this season? I don't see them contending for the NBA title. They can't make noise over there in the East. So I think the main thing for Giannis this season and the Bucks is to see how far they can go. If they make it to the playoffs, keep it moving. If they don't, try to see what kind of acquisitions they can get in the offseason then. Because they couldn't make any big move at the trade deadline. But you can bring in the offseason so you can make next season a championship season there, because this is what Giannis is playing for. He's not playing to just rack up numbers and develop himself per se. He wants to develop team and players around him and contend for an NBA title every single season. So that is what Giannis is going for.
That's it. And I think, whether it be in Milwaukee or not, he wants to be in a position where, championships are at the forefront. And the team is, like you said, the ceiling for them is nowhere close to that right now. And I think when you ask the question, what are they playing for? I think they're playing for lottery balls right now. I think that the aim definitely is to tank the rest of the season. There's absolutely no reason for Giannis to come back. It has been said he has had 4 calf strains or injuries in the last 19 months. Everybody is really concerned about calf injuries leading to Achilles tears. So I think he just needs to shut it down. Say that again?
That's borderline Achilles tendon.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. So you just need to try to preserve him at this point. And if you want to make him, a really huge trade piece, you don't want that trade piece in any sort of way damaged. So I think the best thing to do is to shut him down. What was interesting about this trade deadline, though, for the Bucks, what I think happened and was really, good from the Bucks management themselves, what this trade deadline allowed them to do was gather intel. Gather all the information that they needed on what teams would be offering them, what they could get, so they could make an informed decision in the offseason. I think most people wanted to see a move because they said, well, of course, there's nothing that you could do with Giannis. Try to get the most for him now, but you're going to get a lot for him in the offseason as well. There's no need to try to rush the trade at this deadline when you could probably get, the Brinkstruck and the bank in the offseason as well. When the lottery comes, teams will have a better understanding of what their draft picks, where they're going to fall, where picks will be moving to. After the draft happens, where the players have landed in those draft picks. Who knows if the Milwaukee Bucks tank and they do really bad. I'm not sure what is the pick situation and if they own their picks. But maybe they could be in line for this young man, AJ Dybantster, who's the guy, Jamaican roots, who's killing it in BYU at the moment. As a freshman, everyone is saying, you're tanking for AJ, but then you have guys like Cameron Boozer and all the other guys in the NCAA. They said it's a really good draft class this year. So, the Bucks are in a position to get a next franchise star in this draft coming up. But you've gathered quite a lot of intel, and then you're going to have teams who actually know what their draft pick values would be at that point. Make the informed decision in the offseason. And I think that's what it's going to lead to. We've seen, of course, places like the Houston Rockets, which Kendrick Perkins made, he made a very impassioned plea to them. Trade Alfred Sengun, trade Tari Eason, put some picks in there, and everybody would be happy. The Bucks would get an all-star center, and a very good young forward as well, and the draft picks that the Bucks will covet for moving forward. And Ime Udoka and Kevin Durant gets, the monster of Giannis, on that team. That would have been an awesome trade. The Warriors tried to do something, but it seems like, the Bucks were not too enamored with what they were going to be getting back, whether it be Draymond Green, Jimmy Butler, and picks, that they passed up on that. So there are lots of teams who could now jump into the race as well for Giannis in this offseason. And I think you're right. Just, sit him down, see what happens in the offseason. And I think his time with the Bucks, unless they're going to be getting somebody like Ja back to really make him think like, I want to stay to see what this is like. If you're not getting someone of that caliber, I think it's time to move on. I think he's done. One of the things people have said is that. Say,
agree with that move.
right.
Houston Rockets are, as you said earlier, they're a point guard away from something. I don't think trading away all those guys will make them
right
better
thing.
than fourth in the Western.
Right.
I think get a very good point guard.
Right.
I think a very good right now could create waves, way more waves for the Houston Rockets than trading away everything that they have for Giannis.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So people have that on their mind there in terms of that. So it's an interesting one to see what will happen in him. But like everyone was waiting to see what's going to happen. Of course, he made an announcement today or last night, which not many people were expecting. He becomes one of the minority owners with the Chelsea women's team. Joining Serena Williams' husband Alex Ohanian as one of the owners of that team. And great for you, Giannis. That's business moves. You should be making that. But when you're talking about you joining a team, we were not thinking about the Chelsea's women's team. But good on you. You're making those business moves, and that's his right. But what I think is, like I said, I think the front office saw what the desperation levels were for Giannis. People wanted to try to make those moves, right there and then last week. We could assess what those situations will be, and let's see how desperate teams will be in the offseason as well. And then the most desperate team might win. And the Bucks will be able to get their haul in for this generational talent who's brought them a championship, the first in 50 years or whatever it was. And then he will be on the move. So yeah, you look at teams like Miami, Houston, the Warriors, the Bucks themselves. People even talked about OKC Thunder with the treasure trove of draft picks that they have. They'll probably be able to make like one of the most enticing situations based on what they could offer as a package back to the Bucks. So yeah, I think the era of Giannis, 12, 13 seasons with them, he's done his best. I think, people are saying, he's not coming out and being very forceful about wanting a trade and requesting a trade. But this is a guy who I think people have to understand. He came into a situation from what he was, coming from, from Greece, a family who was very humble. Loyalty is a big thing for him. Loyalty is a big part of his culture. And I think a lot of the analysts are expecting a lot of the Americanisms to kind of just happen with Giannis, him requesting a trade and all that. That's not who he is. Giannis will not be that type of person to come out and kind of make those sorts of demands. And I think they're trying to impose a culture on him that is not his. And he's trying to do things the right way, quietly, everything happening in the background. And let that happen, and we'll see what happens in the off season.
To Milwaukee Bucks franchise, but how long can he hold out?
How long can he hold out? Not. I don't think for much longer. So and I think this is the most engagement we've seen with the topic of Giannis ever, because every other time he has said that he wanted to be, they've been said that he wants to leave, he shut it down immediately. All of these talks have happened because he's willing to move. So I think they can't hold out any much further. So I think he does want to move. So it's time to kind of give him that opportunity. He's not going to come out and say it. And I think, Kendrick Perkins and all these guys who are expecting him to come out and make this bold statement that, it's time for me to leave. And it's true. He's done enough for Milwaukee. He doesn't owe them anything else. He's brought them the championship that they want. All true. But don't expect him to do that. That's not who Giannis is. I don't think his father Charles Antetokounmpo, who, he talks about quite a lot in his history, or his mother would probably want him to do that. This is a team that took him in, really trusted him as this unknown, guy from Europe, and he's made his way. So, I think his time is coming to an end, but let's not expect him to be talking about it really loudly. And the last thing we wanted to talk about here is, as the season goes on, trade deadlines come and go. Teams are now about to acquire players who are waived to set their playoff rosters moving forward. But of course, the trade deadline is always the big thing. I always like to say, as an analyst, as a sports analyst, but also as a business analyst, my full-time job is a process analyst at a higher education institution here in the UK. And for any analyst, no matter it's data, statistics, social media, whatever analyst that you are, when data changes, you usually need to reevaluate what your position was initially. You see certain things change, and now you need to take that in and now make an informed decision based on that. Based on this trade deadline, do we think there's any team that has jumped further or closer to contention from the trade deadline that we move forward, that we've just seen move forward? Is any team in a better position now to contend? I think you mentioned one earlier on. I'll give you the space to kind of respond to that. But which team you think is now in a position to move forward for contention?
Cleveland Cavaliers are in a perfect position now to make a real shot.
That's it.
Take a challenging for the NBA title. Mm-hmm. This is what as I said earlier, James Harden could be that catalyst that takes them from one step to the. James Harden is that player that, on his day, he can shoot lights out. Mm-hmm. And I think in tandem with a young Donovan Mitchell, who's shown that he can do it. Mm-hmm. He just needs a person beside him. And James Harden just showed that he needs that young person beside him. So I think both players is a perfect partnership, and I think this duo could cause some real problems in the East. And I think the Cleveland Cavaliers know after the trade deadline is the team to watch going forward.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. And I think because why I wanted to kind of touch this topic the way that we have was because in November I made a very, very straight up bold take that it has aged well so far in terms of the Detroit Pistons making the finals. But what's happening in the East right now, we need to kind of take stock of what the situation is. I think the Detroit Pistons now do need to be on their P's and Q's a little more. This is not a situation which I thought in November would be a straight walkthrough. And I didn't think it would be a straight walkthrough because I thought the Knicks would give them some trouble and all that sort of stuff. But it's a situation now where they do need to be the margin for error has shrunk. It's a situation where now they have to be a lot more careful with, execution and being a lot more sharper in what they do. The coaching needs to be on point and everything. You have the Celtics, who not many people thought would be in the position that they're in right now. The Cavaliers, who have jumped up, the Knicks, everybody thought the Knicks would be what they are right now. And now you have the Cavaliers with James Harden. This is not going to be an easy postseason for the Detroit Pistons. And one of the things I wanted to be like, okay, so like I said, new data has come in. Do I need to reevaluate? I'm going to be very stubborn and say the Detroit Pistons will still make the finals. But my voice is not as loud anymore. My voice is not as loud anymore. I think they're going to be in a situation where they really do need to be as sharp as they are. And I think what makes me still think they can. It's awesome. It's really awesome when someone gets appointed in a position, or you get an elevation in some sort of way. Jalen Duren being named an all-star, I think, would be massive for this team moving forward, confidence-wise. When you see you don't make the all-star team, you get snubbed, you have a chip on your shoulder, you probably try to play relentless to try to prove people wrong and that sort of stuff. There's that sort of motivation that comes. But sometimes on the flip side, when you do get the chosen for to be said that you're one of the 24 best players in the league this season, that kind of does something to you psychologically. It makes you realize that you belong. You're not this type of person who's just, I'm just here, I'm just on this team. You belong. You're one of these guys who has been recognized as one of the best in the league. And I think, that will kind of help boost him moving forward into the playoffs and everything. And I'm not saying that will be the catalyst for them getting to the finals, but I think it kind of just helps with the confidence level of that team to have two all-stars, first in the East, and going against guys like the Celtics and the Cavs and everything. And the strength that these guys play with, I think is going to kind of continue to propel them.
Of the top 4 team in the Eastern Conference, right?
Yep.
The I think have shown me everything that I need to see thus far in the season.
Yes.
Right? I don't think there's anything else left for them to show, me personally.
Right.
The second team in the East, the Celtics, Jaylen Brown game can go up another level. They still have Jason Tatum in the wings to come.
Yes.
Knicks in third. Jalen Brunson game can elevate when the playoffs start.
Yes, Mr. Clutch.
Cleveland Cavaliers, they have now acquired James Harden. Their game can go up another level.
Yes.
So of the top teams in the East, Pistons is the only team that I think they have peaked out. So it's either they maintain what they're doing thus far, or I don't think their game can go up to another level.
Okay.
All the teams beneath them now can go up to another side. Asterisk for the Detroit Pistons.
Right. I see what you're saying there. Can they kind of kick it to another gear? And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And they need to prove themselves. I can make a prediction foolishly in November, like I did, but like you said, they've shown quite a lot of what they can do, and the potential is there. But can you kick it to another gear, as you rightfully say? The playoffs, like they say, is the second season within the season. Can you actually elevate yourself to that point to get over, 1, 2, 3 rounds and get to that finals? And this is the test that they're going to see. But so, like I said, I said it then. I was a little nervous making that prediction early on because I don't tend to make predictions really early. But they've, as the season has gone on, in it, like I said, it's aged well. But now I come to a point where after this trade deadline, I'm like, oh damn, can they actually do this now? Because the data has changed. We now need to reevaluate, and for them, the data for them also needs to change, and they now need to reevaluate how they go forward with the rest of this season for them. The other teams that I think are definitely in a situation, like we said, the Celtics. I think acquiring Nikola Vucevic is awesome for them. And then the addition of Jason Tatum, if he does come back, is going to be such a boost for them, moving forward. And then you have the teams in the West. I don't think the West has really changed very much. I think everyone has kind of remained the same. The only team who has kind of done anything of note is the Warriors adding Porzingis, and we don't know what the status of Porzingis would be. Jimmy Butler is, of course, out for the season. Now, what's going to happen there, we don't really know. So it's really going to be interesting to see how things move forward with these teams. But the Cavaliers, like I think we're both acknowledging, are the team to watch moving forward. And you alluded to something in the last segment where you said, hey, even if maybe they don't do well this season, this offseason is going to be very interesting for the Cavs. It's already been said that, I don't know if it's rumors or if it's true, but Donovan Mitchell and James Harden have already contacted LeBron James and have already tried to recruit him, to come over after this season. And if that happens, the storylines are going to be crazy. LeBron James returns for the second time, and it is in a contending position. It's not a matter of just coming home to retire. It's just this feel-good story. It would be a season that will count, along with the farewell tour that it could potentially be. Of course, he hasn't said that next year will be his last year, but most people will anticipate that that's what it will be. James Harden, LeBron James, Donovan Mitchell, and they would acquire him I think he's on his last year of his deal. So they're acquiring him, they're not trading him, and not losing anything. So adding him to that team would be actually a really, really big push for them. So let's see what happens this offseason, this postseason, first of all, coming on. You know, as everything moves on, we're going to be right there with that, and then we get on into the offseason to see what happens. So yeah, any final words, you know, or what you want to see moving forward? I think we touched quite a few things, but this was a major topics for us coming from this trade deadline.
Well, the last thing I'll say has nothing to do with basketball, man. Today's the Super Bowl.
Yes.
When this episode is aired, I tell you, Sam Darnold and the Seattle Seahawks will be Super Bowl.
Okay, so everyone has been saying that, and I've been saying to myself, if I didn't wear the Wizards jersey today, I would have worn my old Patriots jersey. And I want to see Drake May. I want to see Drake May come out. And it's only because if I was a betting man, I would go the opposite way. Everybody's saying Sam Darnold and the Seahawks will win. Of course, they have the better team defensively and everything.
Five defense they have over there.
Yeah, man, it's going to be interesting one. So for me, it's going to be a late one between the game and Bad Bunny and the halftime show and everything. I think everyone is waiting to see what this is going to be. And yeah, it's legacy defining moments for two young guys who are going to be playing for their first ever Super Bowl championship, and you know, may the best team win, you know, as they say. So let's see what happens. So yeah, when this episode comes out, we'll see who wins. You're on team Seahawks, I'm on team Patriots. Patriots have been my team for quite some time, so it's going to be, let's see what actually happens this time around. And this ends, of course, episode 12 of Baseline to Baseline with Alister and Orain. We'd like to thank you, of course, for watching, listening in. Tell us what you think about the trade deadline. Do you think, you know, what we're saying, you know, made any sense? What do you think about the Giannis Antetokounmpo situation? The Cavaliers with James Harden? Am I still crazy for thinking the Detroit Pistons will make the NBA Finals? Whatever it is, put your comments in on social media, YouTube, wherever you watch this podcast. And of course, like, subscribe, follow, share, do whatever you need to do. We're just trying to build something that's just really organic and authentic and unique for what we do, you know.
2K.
Say that again?
We're on the road to 2K subscribers now.
Road to 2K subscribers. Still, we're getting there. We're still getting there. And you know, we just want to see more people come in and enjoy what we do. But the reception so far on social media has been great, and we want to see it continue. So signing off. Super Bowl, enjoy it. We're going to see who comes out shining at the end of it after tonight. But take it easy, enjoy, and we catch you on the next one.
Sir.
That's it.
Yeah. From the hardwood floor to the spotlight glow, breaking down the stats every fan should know. Trades, plays, legends in the making. Every headline, no mistaking. Fast breaks, crossovers, highlight reels. What's real strategy, what's hype and feels. East to west, we call it straight. From draft night buzz to finals fade. Baseline to baseline, we cover it all. Big plays, bold takes, the rise and the fall. Baseline to baseline, where passion is prime. Your NBA breakdown every single time.